I had a quick moment on my way to the gym. Finally remembered to bring my little setup here for whenever I have some quick drives, and just have a quick thought that I want to throw out for you guys on YouTube. Just wrapped up another Wednesday, successful Wednesday. We signed up another couple general pest control clients. We actually had a neighbor come and wave down my technician and sign up as well for a bi-monthly service. So overall, I'd say pretty successful day. We signed up, like we said, about three or four people at the most today. It's about 6 p.m. and I'll just cut right to the chase. So you guys know that I hired, two people in the span of a month. One of them was a technician who, assuming things work out, will probably end up being like my number two in the company, so to speak. Like we discussed, nothing is obviously promised just because of like who you are, but everything's trending in the right direction, of course. And, we're staying in communication just about, company goals, this and that and the other. Like I essentially treat him like a number two already. And then the other hire that we hired was kind of like an administrative assistant. I kind of referred to her essentially as like an executive assistant, because she wasn't doing just basic CSR work. She was updating our books for us, like kind of doing, I would say, about a little over half of like the quote unquote back end work. Like she wasn't doing any of my SEO services or anything that's like super important. She was just doing a lot of the mundane stuff that, I just flat out don't really have the time for. Like when we do our, what I consider, what is my time worth per hour assessment, it just wasn't, those are what I would consider $10 to $20 an hour tasks. And at the stage of business that we are at, it just isn't really worth me doing it. However, after having her hired on for just over 3 months, almost 4 months, to be fair to her, like, effort was there. She came in with literally zero experience in just total like admin work as a whole. So I knew it was going to be a process getting her onboarded, trained up. And while she was learning, unfortunately, she just was not catching on as fast as we needed her to at the stage that we are at in business. Like I would have loved to been able to sit down with her for 6 to 12 months and just develop her into like this clone of me. Unfortunately, I just do not have the time right now to do that. And then there were some other things as well that, it was a good learning experience for me as a leader, because there were a lot of things that I did not communicate that were seen as like okay versus not okay, because she was a remote employee, which first thing I learned right off the bat is I will never do remote employees ever again. So if there's one thing you should take from this video alone, it's do not even consider remote work. Have your office admin, managers, all that at a hub, at an office. And if for some reason you're just going to say, no, you don't know what you're talking about, man, there's ways to go around doing it, then at least heed my warning with this. Your employees are going to screw off. They are going to screw off. It is what it is. And where we ended up having kind of the biggest issue was I found out that she was not really in the game, so to speak. Like she was watching a kid. She was literally getting in her pool in her backyard. Like her head just was not 100% in the business whenever she was working. So I started out by just kind of thinking, okay, maybe like she just doesn't have enough work, so to speak. So I said, let's pull your hours back just a little bit. Instead of 8 to 9 hours a day, we're going to do 6 hours a day. And surprise, nothing changed. Then I started being a little more direct in terms of like, hey, like this needs to be done this way. Like some stuff was very, very basic. Communications of the services, what our services entail, just a lot of very fine details that are like very easy, but at the same time easy to forget, again, if your mind is not in the game. So after like I said, almost 4 months roughly of just trying to make this work, I ultimately made the decision to go ahead and pull the plug on the stay-at-home experiment. I told her, hey, we're going to start going to the office next week. She wanted to negotiate, hey, can I have till August 1st? At first I was like, okay, that probably should be okay. And then I noticed performance started even getting worse. I was like, okay, as a last ditch effort, I'm just going to see like, hey, let's go to the office like this week. Like I told her, effective tomorrow. I sent a long email, detailed email about, effective tomorrow, we are going to the office. This is what we're doing. This is why. And she wanted a raise because of it, because of, now I have this travel that I have to do, this commute every day, which to a degree I understand because yes, at first it was a remote job. However, we were on the same page and understanding, at least I believe, that if there was need for a return to the office, then, it is what it is. Like I explained to her and other people, raises are not given just for you showing up. Raises are performance based. So like I explained to her, like, we're going to create a game plan to get you to this amount, this amount, this amount, to get you to where you want to be and where I want you to be ultimately. Because obviously the more money you're making, the more valuable you are to the company. Unfortunately, she didn't really see it that way. And to be fair, like, she's really young, not even 20 years old yet. I remember how I was at 19 to 20 years old. I was, very immature, just didn't really know better myself. But we agreed to part ways that day. My whole point in just kind of telling you all this story, one, is because, like I always say about this channel, I document my entire business journey. This happened 2, maybe 3 weeks at the most, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. But I've had time to process it. And again, some of the things that I've learned was, like I said, I personally will not do remote work again. If for whatever reason you decide to do remote work again, I would just set very, very, very clear expectations on what is okay, what is not okay, what are the consequences if you break these, rules or expectations, and stick to your guns. One thing that I have learned in this whole experience, not just with her, but even with, my other employee, the employee that I had, about a year, or actually 2 years almost ago now, is that as much as we want to be like that nice, easygoing boss, there are going to be times, in some cases even on a daily basis, where you're going to have to just simply be assertive and remind them that, hey, like, I am the boss still. Like, for me personally, it's not something that I like to flex, like a muscle or anything like that I like to flex. I tend to be more of the, like, come to me with your problems, let's fix it, let's figure it out, that type of boss, because I always hated the bosses that were, oh, my office is an open door, we have an open door policy, and then when you try to use that open door, they use it against you. That's the last boss that I want to be. So anytime that, like, my employees, come to me and, like, they're kind of just, I can tell they're kind of just vomiting, the overall just, oh, this is bullshit, this, that, and the other, I listen to it and I, acknowledge it, like, yeah, man, like, I usually don't even say a lot. I'm doing probably like 90% listening and 10%, maybe 20 at the most percent talking. And what I'm mostly doing is, again, just validating that, like, I understand you, I hear you. I even try occasionally to, like, bring up an instance that, I had something similar happen, that, because, to me, it's all about relating to your employees. That's where so many bosses get so out of touch and just lose their base, their employee base as a whole, is they just become out of touch and they can't relate. Where, like, say your technician comes to you and goes, dude, like, I just had this new start a month ago and, I just went back out, they're on a monthly service and it doesn't even look like I was even there because there's webs everywhere, customers kind of pissed off, like, listen to it. And then again, like me, I think about, oh yeah, no, I remember when we did their neighbor's house, it took like 3 or 4 months to finally get that under control. So what you want to do is, again, just set those expectations. That way, we're all on the same page. We don't get a bad review and they end up being a promoter of our business instead of a neutral customer or a detractor. So that's like the first thing that I've kind of learned a lot when it comes to the leadership side, is just listening. And when you respond, don't respond to teach, but respond to understand, like, respond with understanding, if that makes sense. And then if for some reason something is brought up where you're like, okay, well, that kind of, rubs against a core value of ours, then, let them go ahead and finish their thought, and then just kind of reel back gently and be like, I understand, this part, kind of sucks, yada, 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 but this is why we do this. Reaffirm the why. And most of the time, you just move on from there. Like, we all have our instances where, we have our day-to-day mundane task and we're at some point we're like, oh, this is so stupid, blah, blah, blah. But when you always remember the why, it's so much easier just to kind of brush it off and move on, and sometimes even develop even better at that. Now, where I'm still developing as a leader, being totally transparent, is I'm having to actually learn how to be a little bit more assertive, believe it or not. Because, for example, with the employee that I told the story about just a little bit ago. Like I mentioned, I tried to be very understanding of her situation, that, oh, she's coming in with no experience, it's going to take longer, this and that. And I kind of used all of that to cover up and shy away from the fact that, okay, maybe she's just not in it. So my point with that is whenever you start to see something that is wrong or not how you know that it needs to be, you got to nip it in the bud. Don't try to make excuses. Matter of fact, what I usually do is I point in the mirror first. I point at myself and go, well, what could I have done differently here? And then if I've exhausted all of those, if then, I've fixed all those, and then there's still an issue, then at that point, like, you have to be assertive and be like, hey, dude, like, we've talked about this, I've showed you this, we've done it 1, 2, 3, these different days, these different times, and it's still going on. This is your last warning. You can do the whole verbal warning, written warning, whatever the case may be, but just make it clear that, like, hey, like, if this continues, if you continue to go down this path, whatever it may be, you're not going to be part of our business, part of our family at the end of the day. And as much as we all hate, like, those businesses that are like, oh, we're one big happy family here, like, I truly see, like, our business, like, I want to build, like, a family culture in regards to that. When we show up to, say, the office for a meeting, like, everybody's cool with each other, we all have the same mission, we all want to kill bugs, get rid of rodents, get rid of termites, and get paid ultimately, right? But in order to have that true, like, family culture, you have to kind of formulate that culture within each employee. And if they're not going to form and adapt to your culture, then unfortunately you got to cut them loose. But I'm at the gym now. That's kind of today's quick update, so to speak. I tried to keep it under 15 minutes. We might be pretty close to that. For those of you that have been in a similar situation, in terms of growing pains, hiring your first employees, firing, getting rid of, whatever the case may be, your first employees, and just developing as a leader, those of you that are already, maybe even past the stage that I'm at, I know we have some of you that follow the channel that have 5, 10, even more employees. Let us know in the comments, what was your biggest growing pains and how did you get through it? Was there any books, any courses, whatever the case may be? And if you're still tuning in and not subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell icon. My name is Griffin Thomas. I own a pest control company in the Dallas, Texas area, Preferred Pest Management. I've been in business for about 5 years. I've been documenting my overall business journey for about 10 years on YouTube now. I try to do at least 1 or 2 live, Q&A type of videos or live streams, I guess, every single month. We talk about all sorts of things from, growing home service businesses, SEO for them, implementing new AI technology in our home service businesses, leadership, and much more. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and subscribe. Make sure to join our Discord group and Facebook group. Links for that are in my link tree down in the description box down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.